So I like looking at maps. These are some maps that will blow your mind.
So I was on Instagram and I found this. This is Europe if sea levels decrease by 1,000 meters. I found this on Brilliant Maps, so I will put the name on the screen so you can have a look. And if I can find them on TikTok, I will credit them in the comments. But let's have a look at this. So we'll start off from where I'm from. I'm English, so we'll start off with the UK. And Britain now has a land border with Ireland. The Irish are not going to like that. Sweden and Finland haven't really changed that much, but Norway has just decided it wants to dominate Northern Europe. Spain and Portugal haven't really changed their shape, but Northern Spain definitely has. Going into more Central Europe here, it looks like Denmark has actually dented Germany. Italy has now made Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina landlocked countries, and Sardinia and Corsica now have a border with the Italian mainland. Nothing much has really changed here. We've already mentioned Finland and hasn't really changed. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania no longer landlocked countries because Sweden has stopped that. Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova haven't really changed their shape, but Cyprus right at the bottom here now has a land border with Turkey. So the conclusion I have come up with this regarding this map is that Norway is going to take over the world because of the new land that they have. So I was on Instagram and I found this. These are Western and non-Western countries according to the Statistic Netherlands. This is by Geodata Rankings. They're not on TikTok, I believe, so that's the @ on Instagram. But let's have a look at this. So I think a good chunk of these countries are what we'd class as the West in the Western world. So the US and Canada, pretty much all of Europe, Australia, New Zealand. But there are a few which sort of surprise me. So Russia, Kazakhstan, and a good chunk of the Stans and also Belarus are classed as Western countries. Also, if we do zoom in, there is South Korea, which is also highlighted in yellow for a non-Western country. And then on the bottom, there is Indonesia, which is listed as a Western country, and Indonesia, of course, was the largest former Dutch colony. But what I find fascinating about maps like these is it shows you a different perspective on the world. There isn't a rigid and single definition for an Eastern versus a Western country. It can change depending where you're from. Because in the US, the UK, I don't think we class Indonesia as a Western country, but Statistics Netherlands do. And Russia as well, that's also classed as Western, even though we typically view it as an Eastern country rather than a Western country. So let me know what you think. I do think maps like these are really interesting and it does show you a different perspective on our world. So I was on Instagram and I found this. This is Europe if we consider the water as long as the landmass of the countries. This is by Terrible Maps, the Great Terrible Maps. Let's have a look at this. So one of the first things that you'll notice is Portugal dominating. One of the main reasons for that is the Azores. The Azores are part of Portugal, so they do have a lot of water mass as long as the country itself, even though Portugal's quite tiny. Spain is split into two separate sections. We have mainland Spain and of course we have the Canary Islands, which are beautiful by the way, and a great flag. Norway's is quite interesting to me. Of course, you have mainland Norway, and right at the top you have Svalbard and Jan Mayen, because they do technically own it, even though there are some things regarding how they own it. Right at the top there is Denmark, which is actually meant to symbolise Greenland, but of course Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Denmark has a little bit of a spot here as well, but of course Iceland does need its own water area. And one more thing I noticed, just above Spain is Northern Spain, of course, and it kind of looks like Belgium's got bigger. So there you go. Even though this is meant to be terrible, hence the name Terrible Maps, which by the way, I absolutely love Terrible Maps. I'm a fan of this. I love when maps are supposed to be terrible. I think it's really interesting. So I was on Instagram and I found this. This is the population of European countries if the population density was the same as India. This is by Dalmatian Mapper. They are from Croatia, so there's just your random fact for you. But let's have a look at this. So we'll start off with this side. Of course, there are some noticeable differences. For example, Denmark having a population of 1.1 billion, which is actually closer to the population of China and India right now. I would also assume that does consider Greenland as well. I know this is just Europe and Greenland's in North America, but Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, so I wonder if it takes that in consideration. Of course, my home, the UK, a population of 113 million, which is almost double the population of the UK now, which is around 65 million. My favourite part of this is the population of the Netherlands. It's 19.2 million on this map, but it's pretty close to the actual population of the Netherlands now, which is, I think, around 17 million. Then we go to this side of Europe, substantial differences, including the population of Russia with 8.44 billion, which is closer to the population of the entire world. And I know that Kaliningrad is part of Russia, but I wish it had a separate population just so we see how much it is different from the mainland. But my quarrel about this map is that the fact that the stated source is ChatGPT. Not a fan of that. Let me know what you think about this map. For reference, the population density of India is around 488 people per square kilometre. So I was on Instagram and I found this. This is Google Maps in 2005. I found this on History and Memes. Let's have a look at it. First of all, we have Great Britain and Ireland just chilling on their own, which Fair enough, hope they're happy. Over here we have Canada and the United States, and also the territories and provinces and the states visible on the map too, which I always think is really cool when they include stuff like that. And down here we have Mexico, we have Cuba, we have Jamaica, and we have Hispaniola, the island of Hispaniola, which consists of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. But that is pretty much it. It's crazy how much has changed from 20 years, and I don't think 20 years is that long from an historical, timeline. I don't think it's that long at all. So the fact that we can see pretty much the entire world just from our own devices, I think it's crazy. Going back to this is my favourite part, because I love when maps, not just Google Maps, I love when maps actually mark out a specific area in their country. So with America, the 50 states, with Canada, the provinces and territories, I love how it marks the borders and just everything. I think it's really interesting. But let me know what you think about this. I'm a massive fan of maps. I love looking at maps. I love learning about maps. I think they're super, super interesting. Alongside flags, alongside just geography in general. I think this is super interesting, and I think people should check this out more often. So I was on Instagram and I found this. These are the time zones of Canada and the United States if they weren't based off political boundaries. Let's have a look at some. Now, in a simple world, the time zones would be like this. It would be the most ideal thing because it's just simple and straight to the point, but there's a reason why it doesn't follow this structure. For example, here right in New Brunswick, all of New Brunswick's under the UTC +4 time zone, apart from one little bit that's in UTC -5. So it just looks silly, it just wouldn't work. Though I do believe that some states are actually split by time zone. For example, I think Florida is in 2 separate time zones, but the majority of the population is in UTC -5. The Northwest Territories and none of it in Canada, they're split, and even one little bit right at the top, which is in UTC -4. In the real world, Alaska only follows 2 time zones, one for the Aleutian Islands, one for mainland Alaska, but here, it follows 5 and it actually goes over to plus. But of course, in the real world, the time zone's been adjusted so all the Aleutian Islands are in one time zone and are behind the international date line. But because of the fact that they go over the 108th meridian, Alaska is the easternmost state in the United States. And the islands of Hawaii have also been split. The islands of Niihau and Kauai have been split from the rest of the islands. But in the real world, it follows UTC -11. So let me know what you think. I think this map is really interesting, but it shows why setting time zones isn't as straightforward as you think.